Welcome to Return to Zion Live. I'm Dr. Rik Watch.
And I'm Gary Christofero.
And the reason for this program is to educate our viewing audience as what's going on in the world in a biblical sense, as well as one of these major, if not the most major event taking place right now. And that's the return of the Jews from around the world. In Hebrew, that is the term aliyah, the going up.
That's right.
And we've both been involved with the Jewish people for many years, have a love for the Jewish people. Of course, I'm sure you do as well. If you're a person who believes in the Bible, you know that it's centered on a group of people that expound then their belief system around the world, and we're parts of that.
That's right, and we owe them a great debt.
So in this program today, we're going to be focused on Israel at war, and there's a lot that could be said about that. There's a lot of twists and turns in what's been going on over this last year since October 7th, of course, before that as well. But October 7th was a huge turning point in the events of Israel and her neighbors.
True, and most of the media coverage has been focused on that event of October 7th and the subsequent war. But not a lot of focus, Rick, as we know, on those Israelis who have been displaced, those Israelis whose lives have been changed permanently, or at least definitely for the last 1 year now. So I think today's program, we want to highlight and talk about what Israel is going through today.
And of course, we have one of our ministry partners.
That's right.
Well, Michael Utterback from Ministry to Israel. That's, absolutely part of Ezra International. It's side by side, two teams.
Yes. Michael likes to say two hands of the same ministry, and that's how we feel very strongly. We have the ministry of return with Ezra International, helping Jewish people get home to Israel, and then ministry to Israel in the land, helping with all of those practical needs, the things that you need for everyday life, and even navigating the bureaucracy once they get there.
Yeah. So why don't we go ahead and show Michael's video that actually was just filmed yesterday. So this is current events taking place in the land. Michael, of course, in Ministry to Israel has 5 different ministry outposts, if you will, throughout the land of Israel, and knows exactly what's going on. He's got people on the ground. Let's watch the video. We'll talk about it afterwards and the ramifications for what's going on around the world with the return to Zion. All right. Ready? Let's do it.
Well, shalom, friends. I want to give you a brief update on things that are happening in the nation of Israel, what's taking place right now at this very moment, all across the land of Israel. Of course, as you know, we're almost 1 year away from the October 7th date when the Hamas terrorists came across this border and invaded the small little villages that were here. They brutalized the people. They took over 100, in fact, over 200 hostages that are in the Gaza Strip, or were in the Gaza Strip. Now there are probably about 100. We're not sure how many of them are still alive. Israel has pretty well dismantled Hamas in that area. By the way, over 300 miles of tunnels that Hamas dug in that area. And they've destroyed much of it, but not all of it. And there's still a lot of operators, Hamas operators still there. But by and large, Israel has pretty much brought them down. And they're no longer a military that is centralized or that are functioning. I want to mention one more thing too also. That is what we call the private war up in this area here, or the quiet war. The reason I call it the quiet war is because you never hear anything about it. But since October 7th, the next day, October 8th, Hezbollah, which is stationed all along this region in Lebanon, they've taken over Lebanon, began firing rockets down into this area. Over 8,000 rockets have been fired into this region since October 8th of last year. That's amazing. 60,000 people had to leave this area and actually are living down in the regions all along this area in the hotels. Israel had to evacuate them. They're still there. After 1 year, they're still there. In fact, over 130,000 people were evacuated, including all of these folks in this area. And so Israel is in a major war. And at this point, what's taking place here, I don't know if you heard about what they killed Nasrallah, who was the guy that started Hezbollah a long time ago, and 15 of his buddies. bad boys that were trained in Iran and commanders of Hezbollah. But Hezbollah is a major force to deal with. They have 150,000 weapons. Some of them are actually precision guided, and so Israel is working to take them down. At this moment, and in fact, the last few days, Israel has been bombarding this whole region right here. And I think you heard about when they put explosives in the phones and also in the pagers. And at one time last week, they set them all off at the same time. Only Hezbollah operators had these phones or these pagers. And so there wasn't civilians that Israel went after. And at one time, all of those phones blew up. Many of them had them by their heads because they had a note on there that there was something coming. And so many of them, 4,000 guys, were either killed or maimed or blinded. And so Israel took down not the largest portion, but a good portion of some of these bad boys that are there. All right, so they are fighting now in this area, and they're going to have to take down Lebanon. Their goal is to bring these people, 60,000 people, back to their homes. Imagine just for a moment, you lost your job, you have no money, the factories are shut down, the mom and pop stores are shut down, agriculture is dying in the fields, and your life is over, basically. Your kids can't go to school, and you're living in a hotel for a year. And that's what's happening. So Israel is determined they're going to bring Hezbollah down, and they're going to restore these people back. Just last week, Iran got involved, and they fired 181 ballistic missiles into the nation of Israel. I have an app that I see on a regular basis where I can see where they're dotted, where all these things, and actually what Hezbollah fires. On that day when they fired that, this whole region was nothing but small little red dots all over this thing, where they fired 181 ballistic missiles into the nation of Israel. Imagine that for just a moment. And the realities are that no one was killed. Not one Israeli. There was one gentleman who was a Palestinian. He was around the Jericho area, and some others were wounded when he was killed. God says there's not a weapon formed against the nation of Israel that will prosper. So this is what's happening in the nation of Israel. And, I think it's important for us to realize that they're fighting a war that you and I eventually will have to fight here in the United States. I'm here now. I go back in 3 weeks. All of my staff are there. I have 14 staff members. I've got 5 different centers all across this place. We're helping thousands of Israelis. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. God says they will prosper who love the nation of Israel. So that's the key right there. Loving the nation of Israel, praying for the Jewish people. There are soldiers that are fighting right now. A number of them were killed just this last week already. Israeli soldiers have been killed there. They're still fighting in Gaza. They're going to have to respond to what Iran did. And so we're in a major conflict. And it demands of us as believers that we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for Israel. These are God's people, and we are grafted into them. God has given us that place where we are part of Israel. That's who they are. They're our brothers and sisters. So God bless you, and may the Lord prosper you as you pray and bless the nation of Israel. Amen.
Okay. Michael has a lot of verbiage there on the numbers of what's going on in the north and the south. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. As he mentioned, there are over 100,000 displaced Israelis. Rick, you and I were there last March.
Yes.
And we saw the Israelis living in hotels. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes. kids' toys and bikes in the hallways of the hotels, yes. Trying to do their laundry, trying to live their lives, trying to even go back to work if they can, if their work is there.
Yes.
Trying to live out of a hotel for this, and now a year.
And so with that event, that was primarily because of what was going on in Gaza in the south.
That's true.
Now they have, of course, an even bigger issue going on now in the north with more than one player involved. Yeah.
I mean, of course, we know that the head of the snake is Iran.
Yes.
And the proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis. I mean, all of these players are receiving their orders and their funding from Iran. And what Ministry to Israel, what Ezra International, our partners, Ministry to Israel, Michael Utterback, are doing is trying to make life bearable for those who have been displaced, for those who have had their lives completely upended over this past year.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that. It's not only that you're leaving your home, but you're leaving your business, you're leaving your farm, you're leaving everything. And you don't even know what you're going back to, if you can go back.
True. And I know Israel's mission is to get their people home. But as was mentioned, crops dying on the vine, produce, the harvest that cannot be done. I know that there have been volunteers who have gone and tried to help with that process. But who knows just yet how much of those produce fields have been destroyed.
Yes.
And the waste, the economic upheaval that we're going to see, not being able to do the jobs that they know to do, not being able to harvest what they know to harvest. All of these things have a devastating effect on the economy.
Yes, and around the world. So we have Jewish people from all the different countries.
That's right.
Trying to return to Zion, to Israel, and all the complications involved. You have some numbers for us, though, of what's actually going on around the world with the return to Israel, to Zion.
I do. I have a very encouraging report, because even in the midst of all of the war that's been going on in Israel, the Jewish people are returning home. Now,
and that's almost hard for me to believe.
It can be. It can be in the natural, but God made a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that is eternal, that this land belonged to them. And I pulled up a passage from Deuteronomy that I find I always chuckle a little bit when I read it, because you have to remember the context of when Moses penned these words or spoke these words was before that Israel had ever gone into the land in the first place. They hadn't entered the land as a nation yet, and yet God spoke to them and said, guys, because of idol worship and things of that nature, the curses are going to come, but the blessings will come back. The promise will come back. In Deuteronomy 30, verse 4 or 5 says this: "If any of you are driven out of the farthest parts of heaven, from there the Lord God will gather you, and from there he will bring you. Then the Lord your God will bring you to the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. He will prosper you and multiply you more than your fathers." That's a beautiful, beautiful promise. But it comes on the heels of the fact that they were told they would be scattered. But God always tells them that because of my promise, because of his faithfulness, they would return. So there's something within the side of the Jewish people that ignites, and whether it's a return to God first or a return to the land first, one way or the other, eventually they will all come back to their God.
From all the different countries.
From all the different countries. And the Aliyah, the return of the Jewish people, that word, as Rik described, Aliyah means to ascend, and it's become synonymous with the return of the Jewish people. So for them to come home means not only a physical restoration, but a spiritual restoration as well.
And it's amazing to me, because if anybody out there doubts that God is working, all you have to do is look at what God is doing in the land of Israel, what God is doing around the world with the Jewish people.
That's right.
It's really phenomenal.
Right.
So if you lack faith, just look at the news of what's going on in Israel, what's going on with the Jewish people. For them to want to return, even in the midst of warfare,
that's right,
is absolutely
a
prophetic spiritual thing.
Amen. I love what you said there, because I think it's encouraging. We don't have to conjure up spirituality.
Right.
We're watching the faithfulness of God right before our eyes.
Yes.
And if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, that should build your faith.
Yes.
And knowing that God is not wringing his hands, he's not worried. He knows that his word will be fulfilled. His promises will be fulfilled. And so we're watching that in a practical way, Rik. Here's a report that was just sent out by the Ministry of Absorption, the Ministry of Repatriation and Integration of the Jewish Agency. The Russian word is Sakhnut, for those who are interested. This report came from our director in Ukraine. And it says that 31,000 new patriots have returned from nearly 100 countries in this past year. Now, it's the Hebrew year 5784. That's geared from basically September to last September. So we've seen over 31,000 Jewish people go home. Now, the authors of this report purposely scheduled it to come out during this time. The fall feasts are upon us. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the report points out, Rick, is it's what I call push factor, is anti-Semitism. We're seeing throughout the world this rise in anti-Semitism, and that has been one of the reasons, the main reasons given for Jewish people in the nations to go to Israel. They figure, I'm not safe here in the nation I'm in. Why not go to Israel where I can at least defend myself? Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of it. That's part of it. So this is all against the backdrop of Operation Iron Swords, which is going on in Israel today. The document also mentions that there's a younger demographic coming, and I love this. It says about a third of the repatriates, 31%, are young people between 18 and 35. That thrills me because, you know, over the years, Ezra International now has helped over 120,000 Jewish people, and many of them have been older. Some have been, a lot of them have been families, but to see that a third are between 18 and 35 today, when Israel needs them the most, so encouraging.
I think part of that is possibly because there's a lack of respect in most of the countries for the leadership. And so there's like a vacuum going on with who am I, who can I identify with? Right. And when they look at the land of Israel and they see that they work together as one, I think people want to be a part of that. Yeah. And so this younger generation that's lost their faith in their own governments are looking to find something they can be a part of and be proud of.
That's a great point, because so many of the Olim, and Olim is another Hebrew term for those who are returning, so many of them talk about lost hope, or this malaise in the country that they're in, where they just don't feel like they have a future. And with Israel, they feel like they have that future. And yes, so many express that idea of being part of their family.
I think it was exacerbated in 2020 by the COVID lockdowns that took place. And I think a lot of people lost hope in their governments of having the sense of knowing how to take care of the people, for them to continue going on. You know, it's one thing to have a handout. It's another thing to have a handout.
That's great. That's
and
right.
The people needed a hand up, not just handouts.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of one of the ingredients that led to this vacuum that's going on around the world, specifically with that young age group, 18 to 35.
I totally agree. And that talk about that hand up, that is what we're doing. I'm going to talk about the countries that led the list in the return, but I'm going to particularly talk about the ones that Ezra International is working in. We have boots on the ground in these countries. This is the list from the Jewish Agency. Said that Russia, people from Russia, Jewish people from Russia, 19,850 over the last year. Now, I know from our reports on a monthly basis that hundreds are coming home through Ezra International. We've helped them every month. So a large portion of that almost 20,000, Ezra International has had a hand in. In France, we work there. 1,820 Jewish people have come home, and France is one of the nations where we're seeing the numbers.
A major rise in anti-Semitism.
Because of anti-Semitism.
Yes. I'm even wondering, I hate to stop you right there, but I have a question. You know, I'm even wondering, you know, with anti-Semitism, which we're all aware of, we've seen in news reports on this or read articles on this. I wonder if it's as bad, if not even worse, than it was in the 1930s and 40s during the time of the Holocaust. It's bad.
It's bad. And I have heard from, anecdotally, that people feel that it's as bad as it was in the 30s. Yeah. Because, for example, we were talking about France. Jewish people are afraid to walk down the streets of Paris with a kippah on. and the fear of getting mugged. So yeah, that sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, and some of the large cities are trying to run down Jews when they see them with the kippah on.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing.
It is amazing. And then, of course, you've got the factors like Ukraine. Another country where we have worked for almost 30 years now is Ukraine. And 980 Olim out of Ukraine in this past year. And I know, again, from our reports that we've had a big hand in helping. In fact, I'll mention Ukraine. Here we were driving into war zones or close to the front of the war zones because we're getting calls from Jewish families, Jewish people saying, look, we've had enough. We can't take it anymore. You got to get us out of here. And our drivers driving to the front of this war zone and bringing people out to safety and then, eventually to Israel. So Ukraine, it's quite a dangerous place. Yeah.
I don't mean to blow our own horn, but organizations like Ezra specifically, Ezra International is doing amazing things. We really are. I mean, it's not us, of course. It's the whole team that does this. But can you imagine running into a fire? Because that's what it's like for these drivers to go right up to where these bombs are dropping, and it's getting really crazy with all the drones. We were reading some of the information on this. So.
I'll come back to the drones in the little bit of time we have left because it is getting more and more dangerous. Just to make a mention of a few more countries because we want to touch on South America, but we help in Belarus and we help in Argentina, Georgia, Brazil. All these countries led the numbers of Aliyah, the return. But Argentina and Brazil, again, anti-Semitism, poor economies. One of the things that Ezra International is doing, and I think uniquely doing in Argentina, is we're helping teach. We're sponsoring an UPON class. And so for those of you who don't know what UPON is, they're learning Hebrew. The Jewish people who speak primarily Spanish, or if it's in Brazil, Portuguese, they're learning Hebrew before they go, which is such an advantage when they get to Israel.
Yes. So
these are the things that we're doing, and there are other countries where I know we're getting short on time, but this is the kind of work that we're doing today in the midst of a dangerous and anti-Semitic world. Just to follow up on what you said about Ukraine. We just saw an article recently. Was it Reuters that confirmed that?
It was.
That confirmed that Ukraine is using thermite. They're dumping out of drones, doing tank defense, tank warfare.
Yeah.
Which is, oh my goodness, this is an escalation. This is dangerous.
There's another way to put thermite. It would be liquid fire.
Yeah.
It's liquid fire to burn right through steel.
Yeah.
And, my background in another life was, not another life, but another career, was actually working with different types of welding and different types of burning. And I've seen up close and personal thermite burning and cutting. And it's absolutely as scary as you can get as far as the power involved of what it can do and cut through. And they're dropping this out of drones. And it's burning right through tanks.
That is incredible, but it represents an escalation in this war that I fear is going to mean that this war isn't going to end anytime soon.
And no, it's not. And one of the things that we were looking at as far as the numbers go on current events is that Ukraine has tripled its manufacturing and production of arms. And one of the things that they're claiming is this year they may be able to produce 4 million drones. Now think about that, 4 million drones with the ability to drop that kind of thermite liquid fire.
It's changing warfare, right?
It is.
It is changing warfare. That is making a tank a rolling tomb.
Yes.
I mean, because, in the past, tanks brought fear to their enemies. Now I believe these drones are going to bring fear to the tank crews.
Yeah, I agree.
That is a scary prospect.
Very much so.
Wow.
So what are the biggest challenges and we have today? We've probably addressed some of those. What's some of the encouragement we could give to people at the end of the show?
That is a great question, Rick. You know, we discussed not long ago Proverbs 3. Was it 3?
3, 5, and 6.
5 and 6. If we have to all the time, but especially in these days, trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord, and lean not on our own understanding, which the things that we're reading, we're seeing practical evidence of tragedy and horror, but lean not on that, but acknowledge Him in all our ways, and He will direct our paths. Now, when I say acknowledge Him in all our ways, it doesn't say in that passage, acknowledge Him in everything we say. It says in all our ways. That means everything that we do, everything, when we go to work in the morning, when we treat our families, how we go about our everyday life, we need to acknowledge Him. And that will help bring the hope into other people's lives, and it will definitely make a difference in your life.
Yes. And that's not just a passing knowing of something like information. That's a personal knowledge, intimate knowledge of knowing what the other person would do. And that's knowing God's ways. Intimately knowing this is how He acts, this is how He behaves, this is God's character, this is His love for His people, this is His love for you, this is His love for us.
And it's evidenced through what we're witnessing. What we just spoke about was God fulfilling His word. We can trust Him to do that.
Upwards of 200 ballistic missiles coming in from the north, and not one Israeli was killed through that process.
No weapon formed against me shall prosper. It's being fulfilled in such a practical way.
Well, we'll come back with more news, as update as it can be. And we appreciate you. God bless. Shalom, shalom.